YouTube says it has had enough of vaccine misinformation on its site.
And false stories from phony sites to run circles around major news outlets.
Many people don't know the difference between something real and something created to deceive them.
Open your eyes.
If you've ever had this feeling that something was terribly wrong with the world that we live in, but you couldn't figure out just what it was, then you've come to the right place. Secret societies, mystery religions, and the Illuminati have been controlling our reality since the beginning of time. But not anymore, because there is an awakening happening, and you are about to become a part of it. Wake up, because this is a call for an uprising.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. As I begin to wind down the coverage on Charlie Kirk's fake assassination, because I'm sure most of you are already in Charlie Kirk fatigue, and rightfully so. I'm sure you're experiencing it in your day-to-day lives, hearing many of the sheeple out there regurgitate the mainstream media and the government's narratives over and over and over again. But there's one other thing that I want to point out that people should look at, and these are things that should make you go, huh? And a light bulb should go off in your head when you see some of the things I'm about to show you, that this indeed was not a real, actual event. And we know this by how this has been carried out, the way people are behaving around the event, the constant coverage the mainstream media is giving it. And of course, some of these laws and regulations that you're going to see passed in the coming weeks as people continue to remain unhinged by this operation. But this is all the government calling cards, as always. And I want to bring this to people's attention. Now, when a crime is committed, when a murder takes place, do we normally have an area where a murder takes place that people can have instant access to? Or do these areas usually get completely blocked off by, the police, or maybe in this case, the FBI? Well, of course, in a normal world, if a crime was committed around where you live, the police would tell you to stay away from the crime because it's a crime scene and they don't want any of the scene contaminated. They don't want you to touch anything or move anything because it could affect the investigation. But as is always the case with government assassinations or government psychological operations and government staged events, there are never crime scenes because there are never real investigations, which is why they want people to be afraid to question the news, which was the whole purpose of everything they did with Sandy Hook, making you afraid to question the validity of the news without actually seeing any evidence presented to you other than what the news told you actually occurred. No bodies, no killer, just a story on the news, and immediately everybody calling for gun control and more regulations. What you saw after Charlie Kirk was supposedly shot did not look like a crime scene at all. In fact, it looked like the breaking down of a set, and that's really what it was, because this was a giant production. It's no different than after a Hollywood movie shoots or a Broadway play, and they break the set down after the fact. What I'm about to play for you, starting right now, is a clip of what happened in the aftermath. There is no crime scene tape. Let me roll it for you here. If you look, there is no crime scene tape. There aren't even police nearby to block off people from getting too close to where Charlie Kirk was supposedly shot. Now, don't they need to block this area off? There could be DNA possibly. There could be fragments of bullets. Don't they need all these things for an investigation? Remember, at the time, they told us they didn't have a killer, so you would think they would need to gather some of this evidence up if they were going to run after a killer and supposedly catch him. No, but what we see in this clip as you're watching is just a member of Charlie Kirk's production team who doesn't seem fazed at all by Charlie Kirk being shot, climbing up and taking a camera down that was placed behind him. Now, wouldn't this be evidence? Shouldn't that be a police officer, not some, guy in skinny jeans who's taking the camera down? Couldn't we use that so we can actually see maybe proof from another angle of what they're telling us? Well, they don't want that. They don't want you to have proof. They don't want you to have multiple camera views. They don't want you to realize that the event didn't actually take place. So this should be another one of those things, just like Erica Kirk's behavior that raises people's suspicion. They should look at this and say, why aren't the police not pushing all these kids out of the area, telling everyone it's a crime scene, telling everyone that they need to gather as much evidence as they can, gun fragments, whatever, because they have to figure out who the shooter is, right? But instead, what do we see? Well, we saw Footage of Charlie Kirk getting run out the back, not in an ambulance, right into the back of a black SUV, kind of like Donald Trump after his fake assassination attempt. And that was the end of the story. That was all she wrote. Minutes later, people were walking around the campus just yelling at one another based on their political ideologies, because that's part of the point of these psychological ops. But nobody was looking at this as a crime scene. Nobody was trying to go near the actual area where he supposedly was shot, maybe even collect some DNA so we could find out if it actually was a real bullet that hit him in the neck. Did he even lose any actual blood? Well, don't worry about asking those types of questions, because if you haven't heard, they've already replaced the area where Charlie Kirk was shot. They've already covered up with pavers. That's right, they've covered it up with pavers. That's not suspicious at all, less than a week. In fact, it only took about 3 or 4 days for them to do this.
This is the courtyard where it all happened. It's now open to the public again. There's lots of people coming here, placing flowers, cards, things like that. The university is already making some changes. They're replacing the grass where Charlie Kirk was speaking with pavers. And there are several petitions online asking the school to make this into a permanent memorial for Charlie Kirk.
So the common sheeple will see that and they'll say, well, they're going to put pavers there. Maybe they're going to build a memorial for Charlie Kirk. And what they should be saying is, if this is a crime that was actually committed, is this not a crime scene? Now, why would they put pavers there? Well, possibly because they don't want any trace of the fact that there'll be no DNA of Charlie Kirk found in that grass area. There'll be nothing that they actually find. There'll be no bullet fragments in that area. And now that there's pavers on top, well, we don't have to worry about it anymore. End of scene. End of production. That's how your government operates. So days after he is shot, we don't have a crime scene. Nobody thought to cover up the scene, keep reporters out of the area so that the police can handle it. The police could do all the stuff, the forensic stuff that police do, right? That we've all seen before, whether you've seen episodes of CSI or any type of crime show at least once in your life. I mean, Sherlock Holmes here is not needed to figure out that this is a psychological operation because of how it's been handled. If it wasn't enough seeing Erica Kirk mourning over the casket, rubbing her husband's mannequin hand, if that wasn't enough for you, that charade of a production, or maybe just Erica Kirk giving a pep rally and a pep speech to MAGA that they're going to fight and this isn't over, this is just the beginning, 2 days after her husband is killed right in front of her and her children, because you have to assume that maybe they actually saw it on television. Maybe not, because we can't even assume those are actually their kids, because of course they're not, because these are all actors. And the character Charlie Kirk exited the stage. Now, for anybody out there that's wondering, the other calling card here is exactly that with the pavers. It's exactly that. I've talked about the CIA's Orion project. This was something that the CIA began doing in the 1990s. And in Bill Cooper's book, Behold a Pale Horse, he goes into detail about how the government was beginning to plan out school shootings and shootings at public places that people could see themselves going to, like malls or sporting events or concerts, in order to get the people to beg for gun control. Because again, like I said, when people hear these events are fake, they automatically get sucked in. They don't want to hear anything about it. They don't realize that if the government didn't fake these events, then the government wouldn't convince you to be able to get the guns of civilians, because Democrats wouldn't care that Republicans had guns unless they felt threatened by guns because they heard about all these school shootings and they preyed on their heartstrings about how their kids could eventually go to school and get shot, or they could go to the grocery store looking to pick up some pot pie and they could get shot. So yeah, once they get emotionally sucked in, then they start asking for the things the government wants. So the government encouraged the manufacture and importation of military firearms for the criminals to use. This is intended to foster a feeling of insecurity, which would lead the American people to voluntarily disarm themselves by passing laws against firearms, using drugs and hypnosis on mental patients in a process called Orion. The CIA inculcated the desire in these people to open fire on schoolyards and thus inflame the anti-gun lobby. This plan is well underway and so far is working perfectly. The middle class is begging the government to do away with the Second Amendment. In this case, Bill Cooper is talking about false flag operations, where we see some of these Manchurian candidates who are put through trauma-based mind control and then are activated, and they go and they carry out these real shooting events. In fact, many of the famous serial killers you've heard about are actually Manchurian candidates who have been put through these same types of mind control experiments in order to carry those events out so that people become fearful of going here, going there, doing this, doing that. There's serial killers on the loose. Yeah, the only real serial killer is in your government. and in your intelligence agencies. So when we look at the crime scene, right, what should we think of? We should say, well, this is a little bit weird that they're putting pavers over it, that they supposedly caught the shooter, but isn't there going to be a trial? Are we going to need more evidence than the guy posting something supposedly on Discord? Don't we need evidence, right? Don't we need all these little things that they pick up, everything possible, so they can present it in a court case, right? Well, you would think that's how the world operates for us. But when the government carries out fake events, there are no real actual trials. They're sham trials, like you're seeing with Luigi Mangione. You're going to see the same thing with this character. In fact, this character might be used to bring back public executions, perhaps, because you've heard already they're talking about the death penalty. But when the crime scene gets cleaned up, that's a calling card from the government. Let's think of some of these other places where we had demolitions occur right away, right? Now, pavers is different than a demolition, but you can't, what are they going to demolish? It's the middle of a yard, right? Instead of just putting a statue there for Charlie Kirk, they put pavers down, right? So any evidence that some regular, we can't, there's no evidence there for you to discover. We're just going to cover the whole thing up because everything they do is a cover up. So we can look back at Sandy Hook, right? What happened at Sandy Hook? Well, we all asked for evidence. They couldn't demolish the school fast enough, the pop-up school known as Sandy Hook. Decision was made in 2013 by Newtown officials to tear down the building where the tragic 2012 shooting actually took place. Well, okay, what about Adam Lanza? Can we get a little evidence on Adam Lanza other than a creepy mugshot where we all can look at it and say, oh yeah, that kid looks like a serial killer? Oh, right. They tore down the home of Adam Lanza as well. Now, why would they do that? What, nobody would buy the house? I mean, there's stories of crimes being committed in homes and those homes selling perfectly fine, right? I mean, maybe it's a little bit less on the market because, hey, somebody got beheaded in the house. All right, well, but I could buy the house for like 75% cheap. No, they demolished the home. They probably didn't even rebuild there, right? And in fact, if you're not suspicious enough about that event, don't forget that Sandy Hook, the demolition contractors, were barred from discussing the site publicly. That doesn't raise your suspicions? So when everybody out there was asking just for proof or evidence, other than the fact that the news pressed play, they talked to you outside a location you've never seen before, and then showed you CGI photos of people and parents who could barely cry on their own without laughing, the duping delight at its finest during this event. Yeah, all people like us were saying is, hey, look, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but we would like some proof. We would like some evidence before you work the public up into wanting to disarm all the civilians while the government continues to clearly show that they are turning on the civilians themselves, right? So civilians should have been saying, well, we probably want to be armed because the government's really looking like they're going rogue. And now you're seeing it. That's 2013. Now you're seeing it, 2012, actually. You're seeing it firsthand, what a rogue government looks like. The Democrats, the Republicans working together, completely stripping us all of our rights and getting you to strip one another of their rights. So Sandy Hook, not only demolished, right? We had Lanza's home demolished, and we had the people who were doing the demolition were not allowed to speak publicly. Like they had to sign agreements, confidentiality agreements, forbidding public discussion. And still there's people who are like, no, stop saying that. Yeah, well, you don't find that suspicious at all? Give me a break. Then, of course, we had the Parkland shooting, which brought us one of our best crisis actors, but also one of our most annoying, David Hogg. Well, that school just happened to have gotten demolished conveniently after the fact. How about Uvalde? We heard a lot about Uvalde. In fact, when Uvalde occurred, I covered that on one of my 100 channels or so, talking about how the government and the state of Texas was coming in and saying, you know what? We're going to do child identification programs, just like the Freemasons. We want all your kids' DNA so we can identify bodies after the kids are I mean, do people not know what's actually going on here? The data centers, the DNA. Is people paying attention to what the government's trying to gather on everyone? Oh, yeah, they've gathered it all right. So we had Uvalde, and of course, that school just conveniently also was shut down. Columbine, the school might still be up, but they did demolish the library, which was the place that most of the shootings supposedly occurred, right? So they took that down because, of course, it's too squeamish for people. How about McMartin Preschool? I always tell people this should be the number one thing to wake people up, is to look into the real investigation at McMartin. Well, couldn't end fast enough the trial so that they could demolish the school because before, hired detectives and people like Ted Gunderson, before they could actually get in there and excavate and see what was really going on underground, because there were claims of underground tunnels that led to airports, which Ted Gunderson found. Well, guess what? They demolished it so that there could never be a retrial and so that the public would never find out about it. How about the Pulse nightclub? Remember that one? That brought us some incredible crisis actors as well, which I've covered on the website I've covered for years. I can't even remember which year this one is. But did you know that the Pulse nightclub is also getting torn down? Crazy, right? A lot of these places, what's the common theme here? Well, there could be some actual evidence, or none, so to speak, left behind. Buffalo Supermarket, another good one. Remember that? That was the guy that went in there and was live streaming it, and it looked like it was 100% AI. It looked like a video game. And they were showing people actually get shot. It was actually on the internet. Well, don't worry about it, okay? Because they've given it an entire gut job. Now you might say, well, there's a shooting somewhere, you got to give it. Well, no, this is a complete gut job. So they did keep the building up. So we didn't get a demolition there, but we got a complete gut job. I don't know on whose dime. I guess, when they told the grocery store owner ahead of time, do you want a free renovation? Well, just leave, go away for a week. Here's a trip to Cancun for you and your wife. Okay, when you get back, your store is going to be closed for a month, but we're going to give you a HGTV-style renovation inside. And you probably said, wow, that'd be great. This place looks like a dump. It's a small chain grocery store. Sure, go ahead. Right? Because who's paying for the reno? This guy can just afford to do the renovation because what? People weren't going to go there because it wasn't renovated? Because they, people who went there every single week were just going to go to a new grocery store because that happened there? Well, maybe some people. Right? But what did you need to do a reno for? All you'd have to do is just repair some of the bullet holes in the ground, shut the place down for a week and reopen it. Give some freebies away to get people back in the store. Oh, no, they needed to gut it. Right? Yeah, nothing to be suspicious about. How about the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting? I can go on forever. Remember that shooting? You had a synagogue, right? You can see the multiple tie-in agendas. The Tree of Life shooting. Well, did you know that? Yeah, that one too. Demolitions already occurred on that. Boy, they really like to tear these places down. One place they don't want to tear down or haven't torn down? It was the site of a lot of human sacrifice and unimaginable rituals with children where you probably could find the DNA of, everybody in the music industry in the 70s and 80s. Well, Mr. Crowley's house. Yeah, his house that they continue to preserve and restore. Amazing how the Satanists work, right? That place is loaded with DNA, but of course, you'll never know about it. They'll never tell you about it, and the only thing you ever hear about it is how people like Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin bought the home for no reason whatsoever, other than the fact they were a fan of the guy who in his books talks about sacrificing children through sex magic and, of course, cannibalism and blood rituals, right? And if you don't know Jimmy Page, again, this is a little off topic, but, Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin most known for the song Stairway to Heaven, which, of course, really opened the floodgates with backmasking. Other than the Beatles, many people were beginning to listen to records backwards, and they said, why do I hear things in these records backwards that are telling me how great Satan is? Well, because that's how magic works. Listen to this if you've never heard it before.
If there's a bustle in your hedgerow, don't be alone now. It's just a sprinkling for the May Queen. Yes, there are two paths you can go by, but in the long run, there's still time to change the road you're on. Yes, my place I'm all a bit of time, what like we said, we star and say. You the road in your sense, I'm all in my promotion, in a soft and
And of course, backmasking is a form of mind control. Your brain, your subconscious mind still picks up what it's hearing in backmasking while you might not on a conscious level. You're still being programmed via backmasking, and people out there laugh it off and dismiss it, and they try to figure out, is it real? Is it not real? Oh, it's real, all right. And why did they do that? Well, the law of reversal that goes back to Aleister Crowley himself, the same guy who Jimmy Page bought his home, and that home is preserved forever and ever. But the government, or all the governments around the earth, are so quick to demolish all of these places that they tell us that these events actually occur. Is anybody suspicious yet? Right? But you know what the sheeple thinks? That's the unfortunate part. The sheeple have become so weakened by design, by the media and the government. Let's be real. You can't even breathe on somebody they want to call assault on you in the year 2025. But this is the type of stuff they put out to brainwash the sheeple so that they have an answer as to why they demolish these places so quick. When violence and trauma visit American places, a complex question, demolish or press on? Well, in a normal world with normal people, you press on. You carry on. You don't demolish every single place there where there's a questionable killing spree that takes place. In fact, like I said, Aleister Crowley's home is still standing up. You can only imagine how many murders and how much, semen you could probably find inside of that hellhole from that scumbag. But this is how they program people, right? It's normal now. Demolish these places immediately. No trial for these people. 9 times out of 10, these people off themselves conveniently with no motive whatsoever. I just try to tell people, look at it from the crime standpoint, right? That's a big boom these days. Everyone loves the crime shows. They love to watch the crime shows and how the killer's thinking and how the police collect evidence. Well, it's incredible when we watch those shows. Everybody debates. Is this person guilty? Is that person guilty? Ooh, do they have enough evidence to prosecute them? Oh, the defense, the prosecution. What are they going to use in court to get this guy guilty and convict him? It goes back and forth. All these stories like Scott Peterson, all these murders over the years. But when it comes to these big ones on TV like this, right? Interesting that they put pavers down in under a week. That's really quick and convenient. Very convenient that after the shooting occurred, there's no yellow tape. There's no ambulance. There's no police cars. There's just a black SUV that Charlie goes into, and we're supposed to believe he's dead. Just like the kids at Sandy Hook. We're supposed to believe it because it's on the news. And people seem offended when people like us question it. They're like, oh, what is he? Got some guy with a gun. He goes out and shoots his gun. He's some gun crazy enthusiast. No, not at all. Not at all. Do I own guns? Yeah, I do. Do I use them? No, I don't. Will I use them if I have to? Yes, I will. Other than that, I'm not some guy walking around looking to spend my free time at a shooting range, okay? The guns are there to protect the people from a rogue, tyrannical government. And you're seeing it around you. And that's why the government's always so hell-bent on getting it. Now, we know there's more involved in this than gun grabs and gun control at this point. But the red flag laws tie in because they'll affect people like me and you because of the stuff that we speak about and watch and listen to on the internet. But if you tell people that standpoint of a crime scene, right? Imagine that was the crime scene at the Idaho murders, right? That was a big case. Everyone's talking about the Idaho murder. Imagine I was filming. They're showing you the news stuff afterwards, and the neighbors were just walking in. There's 4 dead bodies were rushed out in the ambulance, and then people are just going inside with popcorn. Like, hey, I heard people got murdered here. I'm going to check it out. And they're walking in and out and rotating, and other people up the road are coming with their dog. Like, I was walking my dog. Can I come in? I heard people got murdered in here. And they walk around the house. People, they be going nuts. They be going, what are these police doing? That's a crime scene. No one's allowed inside the crime scene. Everybody knows no one's allowed inside. Well, why is it with these events there's no crime scene? Why is it that these events it's like a pop-up situation where a tent just gets taken down? The guy makes sure he gets the camera. Don't you think the police would want that camera? The FBI? No. Just some random guy in skinny pants, who's taking down the camera and that's it. Doesn't look like he has a care in the world. Didn't just see somebody get executed in front of him. Yeah, you look real concerned, right? Whew, boy, common sense doesn't seem to work anymore. We just constantly see the same thing over and over and over. We see these events carried out. We get no evidence presented to us when it's an actual government event, but when there's a real murder that takes place and a real crime is committed and everybody's sucked into the story and wants to know more, we hear about all the crime. We go, how can they not prosecute? That seems like enough evidence. The husband was having an affair and he was telling the woman he was with that he didn't have a wife anymore and he was gonna be with her for the rest of his life. That sounds like a movie. And they go, well, and that sounds like evidence. And they go, that's not enough evidence though. An affair is not enough evidence. Just the fact that he said that's not enough evidence. We need pure evidence. Well, in these cases, they don't need any evidence. They're told there was a guy on a roof who conveniently got away, and then it took 33 hours to get him. And we know that all these alt-right media clowns have massive amounts of security around them. They openly say it, as I showed you in all the video exposes I've done on this event. But I guess that day he just didn't have it. He only had guys around him who were doing signals with their arms as a blood squib shot off in his shirt, and we could all see his shirt project. Then we had to have the alt-right media tell us that he was wearing a bulletproof vest, even though you can clearly see his nipples with the shirt that he was wearing. So it'd be kind of hard to have, I don't know how big his nipples are, but you couldn't be wearing a bulletproof vest and have your nipples actually showing. So no evidence. The scene has already been, the crime scene's getting covered up with pavers. You're not going near it. Right, just like McMartin, just like Sandy Hook, just like Uvalde, just like Parkland. You think they're doing it because, people don't want to look at that, Parkland or Columbine or... No. When you get rid of the crime scene, whether there's actual victims or not, well, then there's nothing to talk about anymore. Because, yes, some cases there's false flag events where there are victims. Columbine is an example, right? Then there's other ones like Sandy Hook where you don't even have proof that any of the people actually existed. And you see the people talking on TV about their kids who are involved in like 50 other events. And you go, how is this wait a minute, this person's an FBI agent and now They're a father of one of the victims at the same school where the shooting took place. David Wheeler. Well, and then you look at the behavior of George. Oh, these Gene Rosen. I mean, it's incredible. And none of these people will ask questions about that stuff. They'll just say you're disgusting for asking if it actually occurred, which is even more amazing. It's dumbfounding, really, how dumbed down most of these people actually are. So Charlie Kirk, again, just other things to look at when we look at this story, to know that it's a fabrication. It's no different. The tearing down of the set of a movie, of a Broadway play, no different than right after Charlie Kirk was supposedly executed in public. Don't worry about it. No police tape needed here. No evidence actually needed. We'll tell you who did it. You accept that. We'll tell you there's a trans tie-in so that you get angry about it and you forget about an actual trial and how things are supposed to work. And we'll just show you the guy on TV once in a while in court. We won't allow cameras in the courtroom. And then we'll give you what you want at the end. We'll bring back public executions, okay? That sound like a plan? And the sheeple will nod and smile on one side, and on the other side, they'll be angry, and they'll just go back and forth, believing that these events are actually real. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.